just let me know.
Okay. Yeah. So hi everyone. Like good afternoon for some people and good morning for California, I guess. We are here for Airteam community. My name is Alisa. And just a small reminder what we are trying to do at Airteam. We're bringing together highly skilled professionals in marketing, in digital marketing, in design, in web development, and we are matching them with mentors and job opportunities around the world. We really believe that hiring and job search should be borderless and free from any immigration struggles and currency differences. So we can work globally, and we're trying to enforce it with our community. And we have today here Renat Zubairov, CEO of RevOS.ai. Do I pronounce it correctly?
Yes, that's right. Everything good.
Yes, Renat, hi, and thank you for joining us. Where are you joining from? From Germany? From where today?
Yes. Today I'm joining from Germany, from Bonn, where actually I can't say like the headquarters of RevOS.ai is located. It's just a place where I live, because in the modern world the companies are just located everywhere. And, we just work with from the places where our colleagues are, which is at this moment Bonn, Kiev, Rostov. So it's actually another city here in Germany. And actually starting from in a few days, Palo Alto.
Palo Alto. Okay, who is starting there?
It's I cannot announce it yet, but it's like still under kind of embargo here. But potentially one of colleagues who will join us from California, from Bay Area.
That's cool. I wonder how you're going to manage the time difference, because I'm in Lisbon now, working with California and like working like night hours.
Yeah.
Mostly. So can you just introduce yourself? Like, what's your background, and like where are you originally from, and what is
Sure.
your...
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Renat. I'm originally from Russia. Actually, grown up in Siberia and studied in Moscow within like one of the kind of military university, the Moscow University, called named after Bauman. So it's like Bauman State Technical University, where I met a lot of amazing people at the time of study, and also kept in touch with some of them after. And basically, starting from 2002, moved to Germany. So we actually, me and my wife, we both got scholarships from German Academic Exchange Service. So I actually had the luck to study both in Moscow, Russia, but also here in Germany. And then just stayed here in Germany and lived in Germany for almost 20 years already. And I'm a software entrepreneur, founder. I founded my first company in 2012, which we successfully exited last year. We had like a hell of a journey, a lot of bumps on the road, a lot of learnings, but also a lot of success. So we grew from like 0 to around about 55 people, and from 0 to like 2.3 million revenue. We had like distributed team located here in Germany, UK, US, Ukraine, and a lot of interesting experience, which I will happily share today. And my new company called RevOS, as you just mentioned, is started in February this year. So we are back again to square one, more or less. But it was definitely a different experience, and it was different understanding of what we actually are doing.
And why was like you decided initially like come to Germany? Like, why Germany? Did you choose, or you just had this opportunity and you decided to go?
Yeah. At the time we were studying in Moscow, we actually had a lot of discussions with some friends and university colleagues, and definitely it's not like let's say big of a choice, to be honest, because first of all, there's like, if we're talking about the countries and going from Russia to a country like, I don't know, Uganda or Senegal, would be potentially very challenging and interesting. But this was not on my agenda at all, because we were thinking more about, let's say, living and working in a, let's say, part of a western part of the world. Yeah. And to be honest, my Chinese is actually very, very bad. So that basically mostly English-speaking countries were coming into the discussion, and biggest, of course, is US. But US is really, really far away. I mean, Siberia is also not too close to Moscow, to be honest. But like US is even further. And Germany is one of the like biggest economical driver in European Union. Looked like a very attractive place, despite the fact that language barrier for me, as I was studying English in my school in Siberia and in Moscow, was definitely a big challenge.
So you didn't speak German when you just moved?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I also cannot really say I was speaking English, as I could surely guess that my English teacher I had at school never speak English with native speaker in her life. But like as a matter of fact, it's like a reality that obviously the school education, especially in the far areas of Russia, may be suboptimal in terms of language. Yeah.
And how did you start your career here? So you finished your university and you became an entrepreneur like right away? Or actually, no, you said like that you moved in 2002 and it took you like 10 years to start your own company. So what did you do in between? Like, what was your first job in Germany? And like, was it difficult to get it? Like, what is the story?
Actually, when we arrived, we were in quite comfortable situation, as we were, like me and my wife, we just married like a week before we came to Germany. Both got like scholarships from German Academic Exchange Service, in German called DAAD, and a company called Siemens, which is in Germany called Siemens. Yeah. And therefore the situation was comfortable, but nevertheless, at the time, studying time, and where we were living in, how do you say it, in student hostels. That's basically, we were working like many people, mostly full time, or actually almost everyone was working part time on various different jobs. So for me, it was not really like a question if I would like to continue working. It was just like I realized that working experience also in a student is very, very profitable for the future life. And actually, I started working in Germany as a student maybe like 3 months after we arrived. And my first job was actually at a company which is maybe now very well known for its tires, but at the time it was very well known for mobile phones called Nokia.
Okay.
It's and my first boss was there, was also very kind to me, because I told him I literally didn't speak any German, but he said like, hey, look, we're like international company, so if you take very, very old documents, they will be in Finnish. So that's actually totally not a problem. And that actually also made me more complicated to learn German, because everyone was speaking English to me around. That was actually one of the challenges. But basically, but starting at Nokia was very influential for my future career, because first of all, I met there my co-founder, with whom we founded company in 2012. And second, Nokia was actually also very innovative company, this is the time, and some fundamental, let's say, development in terms of product management, for example, which we take as a table stakes nowadays, like agile development, was originally actually coming from Nokia. So they were one of the first bigger companies excited about agile, excited about Scrum, and actually it was a huge learning experience. And I kept working at Nokia after graduation, and were able to travel the world with in my role, also been in Lisbon, for example, in 2006, 7, I don't remember for sure, as we were relocating one of our offices to Portugal.
And what was your position with Nokia? What did you do for them?
I started as a software engineer, so I'm actually a software engineer from a studies background, and then developed more into the area of like agile software development, so like Scrum, a little bit of project management, but then moved more into the product management.
Mm-hmm.
And after Nokia, there was some little time in an Indian company called Tata Consultancy Services. Tata, I think, is a very well-known name, but it was like more like an accident than a consequent decision. And then basically I started to work, moved to a different city, and started to work for one of the biggest logistics companies and the biggest carbon dioxide producer in Germany, a company called Deutsche Post, DHL.
Okay.
So that's, but basically this was also one of the things which influenced basically also the area of my work till today.
And did you face any like difficulties because you were a foreigner? Maybe there is like some, I don't know, like cultural differences that you wish you knew before like starting working, and maybe you have some stories of like, yeah, basically, was it difficult to be a foreigner?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, basically, the time of our studies here in Germany, we were part of like a selected group of students, and we were intensively worked on this area of multicultural communication, multicultural background,
Mm-hmm.
and there are some very very strange things sometimes coming from different culture to German culture, or I think it's not necessarily German specific, but more like a Northern Europe kind of culture, where people are very, very direct. So that it was a nice story actually, which we were taught on the cultural differences course. That our teacher, she was a German lady, and she was living in a dormitory in the same room with an Asian, with she had like an Asian neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
and every time she came into the room, the window was closed and it was very warm. And she was asking her neighbor, wouldn't she mind if she would open a window? And the neighbor said, no. And she interpreted no as no,
Mm-hmm.
which where it was obviously yes. She would definitely be mind that she definitely would like to have it closed.
Yeah.
But she didn't. So she just said like, okay, no is no, right? And that was definitely one of the things which many people, where many people find Germans or people from Netherlands very rude sometimes. And definitely there's like an important aspect to keep in mind. And another important difference is how people express their feelings, how people express their excitement. For example, if speaking to Americans, you will often hear a very expressive, very vivid expressions about the feelings, like how they like something, how they dislike something.
Mm-hmm.
Where in German and like Northern European cultures, the emotions are direct, but they're not that vivid or colorful. So when you present something to an American person, she would like be absolutely say she would tell you how excited she is about what you're presenting, and how much she loves what you do, and how much she's amazed by you as a person and by the product, for example, you're trying to sell to her. Where the Germans would just say like, okay. So, and this is like a huge difference because obviously in our, let's say, in our career, in our jobs, we try to read the mind and interpret and try to understand other people, and we can significantly misinterpret the emotions where the German, if the German will tell you like he loves your product, then there's like a surely 100% chance he or she will buy it. Where Americans would say she or she will have the products, it means nothing, like literally zero.
Just because she's trying to be polite and not like, to say you any direct response.
Yes, absolutely. And this is like a huge cultural difference, right? And then there's also another thing which many people misinterpret or does not really, or it takes some time to understand that in some cultures, like yes doesn't mean yes. Yes, it means I understood what you just said. So if you're asking a person a question and then he or she will say yes, it doesn't mean it's a yes, it's an answer to your question. It's more like I understood what you were asking, what you were trying to ask me. And this lays like a deeper root of this is how we as people, let's say how we, what is our assumption about the responsibilities of two people in communication structure? Yeah, imagine I am trying to explain to you how to find a library in the city where you are, and in this situation, who is responsible that you will understand actually that this information get transferred to you? Is it the person who is trying to say you something, or person who is actually actively listening?
Is
right?
it a question?
Yeah, and this is
the person who needs the information should be responsible to to get it.
yes, but it's not the same in all cultures, right? So sometimes if you are, let's say in Asian culture, if you let's say engage someone in a conversation and he is trying to answer your question, then this person who is answering your question feel himself or herself responsible that you actually really understand what he or she is trying to say. In some cultures, it's more like a person who is trying to explain something just like doesn't care if a recipient understood or get it, but more like, okay, if you didn't get it, just ask again. Yeah, and this is a huge thing. For example, working with we had like a large office in China and also large office in India, or working with Indian partners and Chinese colleagues, as well as, for example, French colleagues as I was working later in a different company. And these cultural differences are very, very big because sometimes it can significantly influence the communication. And the worst of all, that people frequently make assumption about the communication partner based on a written language. For example, if we work on the same project and I receive an email written by a person in English who might not necessarily be a native speaker and might not necessarily well aware about the differences in modal verbs in English, like must, should, might, this kind of, there's significant difference between these words when they are written. So the must do something is not the same as could do something or ought to do something, right? And this brings a lot of complications in a cooperation between the people, which is no wonder actually, because we as people, as animals, at the end, receive majority of our information through non-verbal channels. So the 95% of information is completely lost if we just write an email.
So what you're saying is better to discuss important issues in person, or call at least the person so you can hear the intonation, and instead of writing an email because it can be misinterpreted. Okay.
Absolutely, especially when both people on the communication chain are not native speakers and they try to communicate in a language which is not native to them.
Yeah, so better Zoom call.
With video, yes. Well, actually, I would say better meet in person, right? Because I used. Sorry.
Not always the option, especially right now with all the remote teams.
Yes, but let's say remote team is definitely something important and let's say significant change, especially after COVID. But that does not replace the offline communication, and also does not really, let's say, it does not positively influence the communication at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are many companies in Germany who are not hiring remote, explicitly not hiring remote. And I think from the Silicon Valley, there are also another very nice example is like a company like Apple.
Yeah, it depends. Really depends on the industry. Like if it's a big company, it's more difficult. And if it's a small company, most of like startups, like we are working, for example, with their remote, so they hire like everywhere in the world.
This is true.
Yeah, so let's switch from the corporate life to entrepreneurship. So how did you found your first company? What was the idea? Like why you decided basically to trade your warm corporate job to the like risky and entrepreneurship? What was the idea and what is the story?
Yeah, I think the original trigger was, there's like a lot of me and my co-founder, we were very active like on open source community, and the company I was working in was explicitly like pro open source. Actually, it was one of the key, let's say, criteria for me, which made this particular position attractive. And in this area of open source, there's like a lot of very, very passionate and smart people doing some crazy work, which is completely unpaid. It's more or less like, I don't say it's like non-profit more, but more like very, very idealistic people taking some bets, some risks, and working this area. And one particular topic which was interesting for me, it's actually an article of Paul Graham, one of the founders of Y Combinator, about the influence a person has in particular position in the company. What kind of influence does each individual have on a bigger scale, let's say on a corporate scale? And he basically was comparing the influence or monetary influence of an employer versus entrepreneur, and coming to definitely like significant differences in terms of efficiency. And no wonder, I mean, he's advocating for more entrepreneurship and so. And this was an interesting information. And then basically we noticed that at the time we were working in the area of data and application integration. It was beginning of 2000, shortly after the bust, the .com bubble. Sorry, that was 2010, 2011, shortly after the 2008 crisis. We noticed also how much different let's say the cloud and technology in the cloud providers were different from the technological basis we used to have previously in enterprises. And we just saw that as one of the lifetime chance to jump on the change, jump on and ride the wave, which was actually transforming the enterprise software at the time. And this was actually more or less from our experience, from our work as product ownership, product management positions.
So what was the company doing? Like cloud computing, or what was your first?
Yeah, basically, you could imagine the software products that was used to be used by large enterprises. All of them were distributed as on-premise products, which means more or less, let's say, a software vendor creating a software product, bringing it on some medium, I don't know, a DVD, and throwing a DVD over the fence of a customer and saying, "Dear customer, you just bought the software, now it's your problem." Where the cloud providers was saying, "Wait, we will actually deliver software as a service to your premises, so we will really make sure it actually works." And the software as a service in the cloud significantly changes the landscape of enterprise software. and more or less each piece of software which needs to be lifted into the cloud at the time. And then we saw like this is a huge opportunity, and just to see like which pieces of software we know very well, and we just lifted into the cloud, and this was our product.
Okay. And you had a lot of people working on it, like big team?
I think that the highest we were around about like 50, 55 people, and if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were not like a huge company, but it was like pretty significant. So we had like several million of revenue, customers around the world. 50% of our revenue was coming from North America and Australia. There was some very nice customers who were using our software worldwide.
And you were based in Germany? Like, you were hiring mostly like people from Germany, or like what was your experiences like? Is it difficult to hire like so many people, and did you face any difficulties, and what was your experience?
The hiring was definitely challenging, as the Western countries, especially Germany, is let's say job market, which at the time it was, and I think it still is, very favorable in terms of employee. So the people who are looking for a job. So basically, we tend to pay significant amounts to headhunters, and we had in our company like a recruiter working for us full time. I mean, this person was also doing some HR tasks, but employment was dictated by a need to have a dedicated person recruiting other people, which is definitely was dictated by a need, by a challenge to hiring new people. And as a rule of thumb in Germany, even today, a headhunter would typically take somewhere between 3 to maybe worst case 5 monthly salaries of a person to be hunted, right? And so definitely, and we signed numbers of such contracts. So I personally negotiated a number of such contracts with headhunter companies, which is definitely not actually cheap or simple, right? Otherwise, there will be not such a huge, let's say,
it's like a very good business.
True, and partially this is dictated by, let's say, laws in Germany, where it's significantly it's let's say challenging or expensive to let a person go. But partially because of just lack of qualified workforce.
And what was which professions were like and still like are in lack, and the market is lacking, and you can see the opportunities for like people from outside of Germany maybe to get hired?
I mean, I definitely have very biased view on this because I'm in IT, right? So there's definitely a lot of demand for qualified software developers, right? Software architects, data scientists, project managers, analysts. I mean, just maybe everything across the board. I do not think I could particularly highlight some of the people or some of the professions which are of higher demand than others, to be honest. Yeah. So it's hard to say. I mean, I think everyone in IT is very demanded. Yeah.
And are you working with people from outside of Germany, like with developers, with like software engineers, or are you allowed actually to work because you work with data, as I understand? And sometimes in countries there is a law, if you work with data, you cannot really work outside of the country if you have data or people from the country. So like, are you allowed to hire people from outside, and if you work with them?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. We at my previous company were very much distributed team, right? Although we were not fully remote, but we just had like multiple hubs. So the biggest hub was here in Germany, but the second, I don't know, actually the biggest hub was not in Germany, right, where was its headquarters, but the biggest hub was in Kiev, in Ukraine. And we strategically made a decision to hire and open, let's say, to hire people from Ukraine because of the, let's say, at the time it was not the case, but later on it was validated because of the visa limitations of Ukrainian people, which they didn't have any challenges to travel to EU, and we also as European citizens didn't have any challenges to travel into Ukraine. Which was a significant advantage compared to, for example, Russia, where I'm originally coming from. But definitely there are some challenges in terms of the data protection and security, where the European, at the time it was German, but later on European, the General Data Protection Regulations, or GDPR, had a particular, let's say, interpretations where people outside of European Union may be at a disadvantage to working with the data of people from the European Union. That this was the case for some of our customers, and let's say this was actually a case for biggest customers of Elastic.io at the time in Europe, which was significant limitation, for example, for system administrators. If we're talking about software developers, right? If we're talking about people developing software, as long as they don't have access to a live data on the system, or this access is limited or temporary, this is not a big of a problem. But if we're talking about system administrators who would really have like a root access to the production environment with the customer data, then it's becoming more challenging to hire outside of European Union. Which is actually not because of, let's say, a passport of a person being not European passport, but actually it's about the location, a physical location of a person accessing the data. So the person with Ukrainian passport located in I don't know, in Slovenia would be perfectly fine for the job, whereas the same person moving outside of Slovenia back to Ukraine would become slightly more challenging.
And now you have also remote team, and where are where people are located right now?
We actually have we remained let's say we remained in Ukraine actually. So my
like
team,
nowadays even?
Yes, even nowadays. Yeah. I actually had like a chat today. We had like a call today where one of my colleagues was working out of his home from diesel generator, as due to the war and terrorist attacks on energy infrastructure. They definitely have a challenging time now. But this is basically a consequent decision, which is dictated first of all by the quality of people there, but also through the network and experience.
How many people you have in Ukraine still?
Right now we have actually 2. I mean, we just started, right? And basically then, yeah, it's only 2 people in Ukraine right now.
And you were hiring a lot for both of your companies. And what do you think is important when building a successful team? What makes your team successful? And especially when it's like remote and you don't really see your colleagues like for years, like how do you manage it, and how to make the team successful?
I think it's definitely very challenging, or it's becoming even more challenging when hiring remote without a central hub, right? What was definitely noticeable that people at the time located or working in one hub, for example, Ukrainian hub, were better interconnected compared to the people working in different locations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
And absolutely, yes. And the time difference is not that bad. I mean, it's only 1 hour, for example, in this case, or with UK, it was also only 1 hour. But it's absolutely crucial to see each other, to bring people together offline or without, like, outside of Zoom. I know it was challenging in COVID, right? And it's still very much challenging with Ukraine right now, if we are speaking about male colleagues. But this is absolutely crucial in terms of like team performance, and also in terms of, at the end of the day, like return of investment, right? Because when people are hired, they hire to achieve some particular task, and the return of like investment in people would be definitely significantly higher if the team cooperation works well, especially taking into account this verbal, non-verbal communication channels and all the things and differences in culture. We learned hard way that it's significantly better for a team environment, for the culture, bringing people together on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. So you do like some offsites, or how do you do it?
Exactly, yes. I mean, right now with Ukraine, it's absolutely impossible, right? I mean, I could potentially go to Ukraine, which is also will be pretty challenging. But it's definitely very crucial. And the second aspect as well is we all heard, I think, I'm not sure if you know about like Conway law. If you heard about Conway law, it's actually a very nice, let's say, empirical observation, which says that products companies create, like internal structure of a product a company creates, closely resembles an organizational structure of a company that created it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take your iPhone, and look on it like from pieces perspective, from components perspective, the components of an iPhone will resemble the organizational structure of an Apple as a company.
Okay.
Because people tend to work in groups, right? And groups have like less friction communicating within the group and more friction communicating outside of the group, as it should go up and down, you know, and this kind of escalations. Which means that the groups tend to create products or pieces of products which resemble in the area without affecting that much of a different pieces of a product, which means that the product itself is actually resemble the core organizational structure of a company. And this is true for many different kinds of products, but at the same time, it's a significant limitation, yeah, because you don't want your product, your I don't know, your software have like duplicate parts because people are just sitting in different countries, right? You don't want to have like German part of a product and Ukrainian part of a product and American part of a product, because the customers don't care how many offices you have, right? They want just a consistent customer experience. And this is also another aspect which you need to be considered, when people are when people hire, but also when people also work together.
Okay. And how is it this law is applied to your company? Is your company is also resembling your product is resembling the structure of your company?
I mean, right now we're a very small team, right? So let's say the friction, the communication friction within our small team is actually non-existing, right? We are constantly on Slack, we're constantly on Meet, on calls. It's not really a challenge, right? But once the company will start getting bigger. So my previous company, for example, we had with my co-founder, we had this realization that, for example, how we divide people in teams influence the product our customers see, which was not intentional, but more or less a fact, because then you start thinking like, our customers are asking why this piece of software does not speak to that piece of software. Oh, because it was developed in different countries. Yeah, that's basically another aspect of communication, definitely, and also aspect we need to consider during hiring.
And did you discover some cool tools that are helping you to manage, like except of like Slack or Zoom? Did you discover some cool tools that help you to manage remote teams, like that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely big favors now of online collaboration software, whiteboarding.
Like Miro?
Something like exactly Miro is one of them, or another. I just get to know another company recently called Stormboard. They're doing very similar product to Miro. But then there's also concept boards. There's like a number of them, which is definitely very helpful in brainstorming discussion, especially on remote. But apart from that, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if you remember something, you can just send the link and we will share it
Sure.
with the community.
Definitely. Yeah.
Always interesting what people are using in terms of like tools and technology that helps to like bring this team feeling to the remote teams.
Yeah,
it's challenging. And do you work with freelancers at all? Do you hire like freelancers from outside Germany? And if yes, for which kind of jobs, like maybe marketing, design, or?
Right now, we do use freelancers, right, on a project basis. I think last time we used it for user experience design, so basically just drawing our prototype of our software in Figma. That was definitely worth it, and basically there's another kind of some few areas where we hire freelancers. So typically, I think we will hire a designer. Then there was another small kind of publishing preparation kind of task which we outsourced to freelancers. But in my previous company, we also used freelancers for a variety of different tasks, mostly also about user experience, user interface, marketing, and design, PR, right? So we also used an external PR consultant, and sales also, pretty much across the board,
Okay. And my favorite question is, are you hiring now? If there is any job openings, and if any of our community want to apply, they can send their CVs to the job openings.
Yeah, definitely. This is definitely one of the things which we are doing right now, as we growing in terms of, let's say, customers, and we're very early stage, right? So we just hopefully we'll have our first customer go live next week, in the middle of next week. But what we are actually looking for is expand our team in terms in the area of data science. So if there's like let's say an interesting personality who would really like to work in an early stage startup, which have significant risks combined with significant upside, that definitely would be interested. And another area where we would also potentially consider now a new hires is user experience area. However, I should say, especially in the early startup days, it's very challenging in terms of, let's say, salaries expectations. And the second is obviously there are a lot of people, let's say, from a previous company, and right now I should say mostly work with them so far because of like trust, relationships, and understanding of people. But we definitely will be open to new entrants, especially in the area of data science, as I don't have yet a good connection in this area.
Okay, yeah, we will update our community and see if we have people for these positions. I think we have a question. Yulia, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you please recommend some resources, or maybe, I don't know, companies who helps with hiring people in Germany? for example, I'm an engineer, male engineer from Russia, where I can find a job now.
My male engineer is very specific.
Mhm.
You mean more like a headhunters, or what do you mean?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, well, I don't remember, to be honest. You know that these headhunters are more like they are freelancers themselves usually. And yeah, let's say so. The problem with the headhunters, when we hire headhunters, we were always thinking like, okay, we need a person who has like existing network, right?
Mhm.
That he or she would immediately say like, you need this guy? Of course, I have like here, I have this and that guy. But then you start thinking like, okay, after he or she will provide you with a person and you will be happy with it, he or she will be hired by a new company where he will ask, okay, do you have this guy? And so, of course, yes, this is the guy. And he was already working at your company. So it's like, let's say, a scaling challenge in this profession, right? Which is definitely limiting, let's say, brand awareness of such companies. But this is again one case, right?
But for
Another case,
start,
sorry.
if you want to place your, I'm sorry, your
Mhm.
resume somewhere, where you need to start.
I would say the best place right now, as of today, is actually LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is the biggest. I mean, I think I'm on the LinkedIn maybe an hour a day, at least.
Mhm.
Right? LinkedIn is managed to occupy such a central role for business communication, which is absolutely mind-blowing, considering unavailability of LinkedIn, for example, in Russia, right? For many Russian friends, it's not obvious the value of LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is
Also blocked.
no, it's
It was
it's
blocked in
crazy.
Russia for several years.
4
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
Right. Okay, makes sense. But the LinkedIn has a huge amount of information. It has a very, very active job board, and it provides an excellent ways to get introductions. Many people on LinkedIn, especially in the western part of the hemisphere, right? So Europe and maybe less so, but Americans are very open to communicate on LinkedIn, very helpful in introductions. And also there's like a huge ecosystem around that, being it products from LinkedIn or products outside of LinkedIn, but connected to LinkedIn, which can help significantly with this.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Renat. I think I ran out of questions, and we had people who wanted to join but couldn't because of the time difference. And we will post a recording on our YouTube channel in a week or so. Thank you for your time, and have a great evening, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thanks you guys also for a nice conversation and nice questions. And good luck
Thank
with
you.
the community. I think the community is also definitely a trend in this area. And I wish your community to prosper and grow and prosper.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.